Okay, well, I just want to say, well, my name's Sam, and I'm on the committee of Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Dorchester, and we've had a great team of people helping us to get this sorted today. And we called up International Women's Day under the guise of Palestine Solidarity Campaign because the genocide in Gaza has exposed the brutality of war and the effects it has, especially on women. Palestinian women have seen their families destroyed, killed, maimed, arrested, tortured, and yet they still have to look after the children that they have around them. Their kids have lost limbs. It's the highest number of children with amputations, as we know. There's very little medical treatment. They can't feed and care for their children. And then the burden of war always falls on women a lot more. And women giving birth in a war zone is hard to imagine, isn't it, with no medicine. And also there's been no formula milk for the newborns, and a lot of the women have been so malnourished they can't even breastfeed their children. So we're inspired and humbled by the strength of the Palestinian women. And let's remember the mother of Hind Rajab. So International Women's Day has always had radical roots. It's been going on for 100 years, and we still live in a deeply sexist society. We've seen the Epstein files, shows how the rich and powerful can treat women and believe they can get away with it. And we have ICE on the streets in America, haven't we, who killed Renee Good in cold blood for being a woman who dared to stand up to them. And Trump and his allies are now claiming to be waging wars because they want to liberate women. And yet they've just bombed a school in Iran with 170 schoolgirls. So no woman has ever been freed by American bombs. Let's be clear about that. And as our title says, women are always in the forefront of any fight backs. And we're going to hear from some of them today.
So I'm Becky, I'm Branch Secretary for Unison. I mean, today this is a fantastic turnout. Absolutely amazing here celebrating International Women's Day, but also more importantly, it's about the fight. It's about continuing that fight. I think across the world at the moment, we're actually seeing a decrease in women's rights. We're seeing sort of increasing dangerous landscape across the world. In Iran, in Palestine, in the USA in particular, where we've got a fascist government in place now with Trump. They have completely got rid of abortion rights. Women are dying in hospitals, not being allowed to have any ownership of their own bodies. And we've got women being murdered in the streets by the state. It's absolutely horrific. And I do agree with Tia, it can be really sort of depressing and get you all down with everything that's going on. And here in the UK, we've got Tommy Robinson, we've got Farage, we've got Reform, and they're all making us fight against each other, squabble below, looking at, you know, the differences between people rather than what brings us together. And that's really, really divisive. And while the capitalists and the billionaires up there are rubbing their hands, getting their money in, we're fighting at the bottom, blaming each other. And we can't be doing that. What happens, and what's the most important thing, is about coming together and standing together. And I think that's where the trade unions, from my point of view, is where we come in. That's where we fit, because we actually get women standing together, fighting collectively, speaking out, and that's where we can make changes. And we've seen that in the 70s with the Equal Pay Act, with women went out on strike action there. We're seeing it currently in our employment rights bill, the new one, where we've got more provisions and more protections on the menopause in the workplace, sexual harassment. But we've still got gender pay gap, that's like nearly 13%. We've got the gender pension gap. We've got the gender health gap. So we just have to continue to fight, and it's not just for women to do that. That's really important. It's for men, and actually, men cause a lot of the issues. 1 in 3 of us will experience violence by the opposite gender. You know, so it's about us all coming together and all standing together and fighting, and that's where we can make these improvements. And whether it's something where you go on to, you join strike action. You go to a workplace and you get a menopause policy in place, you come to events like this, you go on marches, that's where we can achieve things. And I think when women come together, change does happen, and we can actually change the world. Thank you.
I'm feeling quite paralysed, actually, as I'm sure many of us are. As a solo mum to 3 children, I feel pretty helpless when I look at the world. But something that I always have a lot of is feelings. And Anne Frank said, never ignore feelings, however unjust or ungrateful they are. And I think that's really powerful. Sometimes I feel so deeply privileged being white, being in the UK. And then I think, well, women in the UK still suffer. I was 10 when I was first called fat. I was 12 when I was called flat-chested. And before my period started, I had been called frigid. I knew before I was even an adult that my body and who I was as a woman was being conditioned by the desires and the needs of men. When I was 18, I was attacked walking down a street in Japan and bundled into someone's van. Luckily, there was a 7-Eleven and I got rescued. And I wouldn't be the only one in this room that has probably encountered something quite similar to that. I think there are 3 things missing in the world right now: empathy, integrity, and accountability. And I think accountability is a massive one. The powers that create the wars, that propagate the wars, are the same powers that propagate the polarisation of society: rich and poor, black and white, immigrants and civilians, as if we're different. And I think it's really important to focus on that. And I think for me, one thing which I just want to say is that as I look at all these amazing women in the room, I guarantee so many of you have stories that have never been told. I think this is really, really important, because the powerful people do not want to hear our stories. The Epstein files, I'm really sorry to say it, but I wasn't that surprised, because I've spoken to so many women in my life that have had stories that have been silenced and dismissed. Last year I went to Dorchester Hospital after recurrent miscarriages, and I had an appointment with the consultant to discuss this, and I asked after my baby, and he said, it wasn't a baby, it was a blob of cells. And I sort of smiled and nodded and agreed. And then he looked me up and down, as a lot of men do, and said, you're young, you're fit, there's plenty more babies in you. And I went to the doctor a month later talking about double incontinence that I have post-birth. And she said, if you were a 35-year-old man, we would have a solution for this. And I think that pretty much sums up the misogyny that exists in society today. And this really is the same misogyny that creates and propagates the wars that we see in Iran, that we see in Palestine. Women and children are suffering as a result of this. And I think it's really important that we make a point now, like as white people, we stand up for black people. As men, we need to be standing up for women. And we need to really cut the crap of all these divisions. We are all humans. We would all need a world that needs to be thriving for the children. I've got 3 children. I mean, I'm looking at a future that may not even exist. And most of you have young people, have women, sisters, daughters in your lives. This is their world, and we need to stand together, and I know we are, but we need to spread that out into society, because we really all need the same thing here. We need a thriving planet, and one where gender misogyny, gender apartheid doesn't exist. So I thank you all for being here, and thank you all for standing up.
I've written a few words very briefly this morning, so I'll try and get through them in my 4 minutes. I always try to say something inspirational, and as so many of you have done today, but to be honest, I'm struggling lately, so I'm going to try to start with something a little bit more real. Being a mid-30s woman who is single, I often find myself speaking to a wide range of men, and I have lately found the conversation that comes to me most often is, why are you protesting? Why are you fighting for Palestine? What about our problems here? And usually after some interaction it ends in, well, I've deleted my social media, I've moved away from everything and I'm ignoring it because it's so depressing. And while I'm not going to excuse that behaviour or justify them or say that it's women's jobs to save the lonely men, there is a part of me that does slightly understand it. And how could they not feel like that on the backdrop of what we are seeing? The president of the most militarized country in the world is a rapist. We have Sudanese women drowning themselves to avoid sexual abuse. 150 girls were bombed under a double tap bombing by America and Israel this week. We live in the 6th richest country in the world, and young people are drowning under student debt. Hospitals are under pressure, schools are under pressure, councils are under pressure. There is poo in our water. People cannot connect with each other, their communities are broken, they can't afford to go anywhere. Reform have announced a taxation on people who do not have children, a policy taken directly from 1935 Nazi Germany. There are paedophile rings of rich elite men being hidden by our own governments.
Yeah.
They are chipping away at our rights to protest, our rights as humans, our rights as women. So why don't I join so many and just look away? As a mother, as a Palestinian, and as a woman, I know that there is a cost to indifference. As I spoke to my Gazan teacher, who's trying to teach me Arabic, and I say, can I hear the drones? And she tries to brush it off and talks to me about my holiday. I ask her about her dreams to travel. She tells me she wants to go to a pilgrimage to Mecca. I try and make her feel better and downplay the travelling that I am so privileged to have. But what can I say to a 21-year-old woman who has lived her whole life in a military camp? The week after, I speak to my other Arabic teacher in the West Bank. He asks me, can you hear the bombs dropping behind me? I ask weekly, do you need to go somewhere? I'm a bit ashamed because I know as a Palestinian there is nowhere for him to go. There is no shelter, there is nowhere to run. But I ask anyway. I text my cousin, are you okay? Fully knowing that she is not okay. She texts back, they shut the border, I can't get home. Me and my sister want to be with our family. I text her the next day. Are you back? Yes, we're all together. It's really bad. The windows are shaking. Everything's bad. Again, I feel ashamed. I don't know what to say. So I fight. I look, I read, I speak. For them, I will keep fighting. For the survivors of rape, for the girls who are trafficked by wealthy men, the girls under the rubble, and the women that dream of leaving their eternal prison, for those that choose not to have children and give their life to their communities, for my cousin who just wants to be with her sister, and for the mothers sat by the phone hoping that their sons will come home. I fight because I know the cost of indifference is the blood, tears and dreams of women and girls.
My name's Barbara Cohen. I was born in 1949 in a Jewish family in Essex, just a year after the foundation of the State of Israel. My grandparents were all refugees from pogroms in Eastern Europe, and they came over at 14 to 17. So my family, I grew up in a family that was celebrating because they felt that there was somewhere safe where they could go if they got attacked in their country. So that's the kind of background that I grew up in. And also I got told, we all got told in my family, that there was no one living in the country. There was a land with people with no land found a land with no people. That's the story that we got told. And my sister and brother, who are a bit older than me, they still believe it, I think. So I just want to talk. Do you want someone else? Do you want someone else to stay? That's all right.
I'm just overwhelmed.
Yeah, I'm a bit as well. Anyway, so I wanted to just say I wanted to talk a little bit about a few things. By the way, when I found out what was going on in Palestine, I started going out there. I went out by myself for about 10 years. I used to go out every summer for a few weeks, and I used to go into the West Bank, into Palestine and into Israel. And I decided I wanted to listen to people's stories and not be for some and against others, because I think it's very important to hear everybody's story. And I did that until COVID. I haven't done it since then. And I wanted to just say that I just wanted to point out that Jews are only 0.2% of the world's population. 98% are non-Jews. So we're actually a very small minority, but we seem to get a lot of coverage. And somebody said that we're underprotected and overexposed. There are a lot of roots. I want to talk a bit about anti-Semitism, the real anti-Semitism, not the pretend stuff, which breaks up liberation movements and has done for years. I don't want to talk about the historical roots of it because many people know that. Some came from distorted teachings of Christianity. People seem to forget that Jesus was a Jew. He was a revolutionary Jew. Yay! But anyway, I want to just say something about, hold on a minute. Yeah, I want to say a little bit about why Trump, of course, he gets loads of support from Christian Zionists, of which there are many, many million in America, and are evangelicals. And of course, they have been supporting Israel financially for years. And their story is that Jesus will come again when Israel becomes very strong. So they're quite keen on Israel possibly even taking over the Middle East, and very keen on giving Israel lots of weapons so that they can murder Palestinians and lots of other people in the Middle East, like what's going on now. I've got to just have a look at my notes. Hang on. Yeah, I'm not going to read all of them because I know I haven't got the oh God. Right, okay. I just want to really remind everyone that anti-Semitism is used to break up liberation movements. It's been used for years. It was used in South Africa. And we mustn't let that happen. You know, wherever there's a really strong movement of people wanting liberation, Jews are kind of, it's encouraged for Jews to be attacked. And Jews are very strong in liberation movements. They always have been. So I just wanted to point out a few quickly things. That is to divert people's attention away from the real source of the... Hold on, I've got to get my glasses on. From the real source of the difficulty. Of course, it diverts attention away if you start picking on some people in liberation movements. And it also isolates Jews from every other progressive movement. Like you can see in America at the moment, universities, people are being thrown out of universities. And some universities are not getting much money, and it's all blamed on their anti-Semitism. You know, so that makes it really hard. It's kind of making out that Jews are the devil, they're the demons. Of course, it makes it even harder for Jews that are involved in liberation movements. It isolates Jews and it makes it hard. So it creates more actual anti-Semitism. And of course, criticising Israel and the Israeli government is nothing to do with anti-Semitism. They are not Jews. You know, they are not practicing Jews. Judaism is about loving and caring for people. I was brought up as a Jew. I've been a practicing Buddhist for over 50 years, but I know that my background has made me a caring, loving, warm person. So this is nothing to do with being a Jew. So we can all criticise the Israeli government as much as we need to. And if somebody attacks us in some way, then, you know, we just have to tell them to shut up and piss off. Anyway, I don't think I'm allowed to speak and my time's up. But thank you.
I didn't just learn about the history, the strength, courage and the solidarity of Irish women from books. I learned it at kitchen tables, in quiet conversations, in the stories over tea, in laughter, in tears and songs. Like the women who came before me, the backbone of resistance, the heartbeat of Irish freedom. in the resilience of the women who raised me, my mother, my grandmother. In Ireland, women have always carried more than their share. They carried families through deep poverty, apartheid, discrimination, famine, genocide, and conflict. They carried communities through silence and stigma. They carried political movements when leaders were imprisoned, executed, or exiled. History rarely named Irish women as heroes, but their stories passed down through generations of women. They became heroes nonetheless, daring to shine in a time that denied them that right. The story of Irish independence wasn't handed down to me as a myth. It was handed down as a memory, as something lived, as something endured. My grandmother was born in colonial Ireland, carried the weight of a country when they found their freedom to find its feet, and the grief and discrimination and the dehumanisation she's seen her people go through. My mother instilled in me the belief that women should be heard, respected, and free from male and religious chains, to stand alone with courage and strength, and to be the voice for the voiceless. They passed that to me, not as anger, but as solidarity, not as bitterness, but as humanity, not as division, but a deep understanding that freedom means nothing if it's not equal. I stand here today because of them, because Irish women did not simply witness history, they shaped it generation after generation, and today I carry them with me. When people speak of Ireland's struggle for independence, they often speak about men, but revolutions never carried by men alone. They are carried by women who refuse to wait. In 1916, Countess Constance Markievicz walked into a rebellion and later became the first woman elected to the British Parliament. She did not wait for power and space for her. She claimed it. Maud Gonne stirred a nation's imagination long before guns were raised. She understood that freedom begins when people, every people, deserve dignity. Hannah Sheehy Skeffington fought fiercely for women's right to vote because she knew there could be no true Irish Republic while women remained voiceless. Independence without equality is unfinished business. And during the Easter Rising of 1916, Margaret Skinnader climbed rooftops with a rifle. Winfred Kearney stood in the General Post Office beside James Connolly and refused to leave even under fire. They were not supporting characters in history. They were shaping it. After executions and imprisonment tried to crush the rebellion and the dream of an Irish Republic, women carried it forward. Kathleen Clark, Mary McSweeney, and Margaret Peace transformed their grief into leadership. They refused to let the sacrifice become silence. In later decades, during the turmoil in the north of Ireland, Marie Drum insisted that women be central to political life. And at just 21, Bernadette Devlin McAlliskey stood in Westminster, young, working class, fearless and unapologetic. She was the youngest woman ever elected to a British Parliament. She refused to soften her voice to make power comfortable. She made her voice to make them feel uncomfortable. She demanded justice for the oppressed, challenged authority at every turn, and spoke truth even when the world told her to stay silent. Her courage inspired generations of women to believe that being young, being female, being working class and from a discriminatory, segregated communities, there was never obstacles to leadership. There was a source of power. Bernadette taught us something, that freedom is not given, it's claimed, it's demanded, it's fought for. These women did not all agree. They stood on different sides of arguments and eras, but they shared something unshakable. They refused to be silent. The struggle for independence was never only about land and flags, it was about dignity, about who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to decide. International Women's Day is a reminder that progress has always required women's courage. No law has ever changed because a woman was silent. No injustice has ended because women were patient enough. Change happened because women organise, because women persist, because women decide enough is enough. The women of Ireland fought to shape their own future, and I stand here because generations of Irish women shaped me. We must protect our voices. We must protect each other. We must insist on dignity, not as a favour, but as a right. Bernard Devlin once said, "Yesterday I dared to struggle. Today I dare to win." So let us dare not only to struggle, but to win for ourselves, for each other, for all the women and girls around the world fighting injustice. And my final words from Irish-American activist Mary Harris Jones: pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living.
Happy International Working Women's Day, everybody. What a delight it is, and it's lovely to see so many of you here. So on Wednesday, I was having a bit of a bad day and I wrote a speech for today, and then I woke up this morning with a renewed sense of optimism, and I ripped up that speech and I thought, I'm going to do something different. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to talk about women who inspire me and who inspire all of us, rather than talk about the crap patriarchal system that we all have to struggle to live under. So, first of all, I want to talk about Mahsa Amini, the 22-year-old who died in police custody in Iran in 2022 because she dared to fight the system and to say that she didn't want to wear her hijab. So, and then that sparked loads of protests across Iran. And that takes a level of bravery. I mean, I think I'm a handful, but you know, I reflect on the fact: would I be as brave as that? Would I be as brave to stand up, knowing that if I go out on protest, I could be killed? I want to talk about Virginia Giuffre's, the lady who wrote the book called Nobody's Child, that detailed the abuse that I know we've talked a bit about the Epstein files today. And has probably sparked the kind of the where we are today. But you know, do we actually think as women that actually any of these people are going to be held to account? I don't know. I hope so, but I don't know. Giselle Pellicot, the French mass rape victim, who bravely stood up and waved anonymity. Is that the right word? Anonymity. And basically, she wanted to get that message across that the shame of sexual violence needs to shift. That shame should not be left for women to hold that shame. I want to talk about Renee Nicole Good. Thank you. I want to talk about Renee Nicole Good, the 37-year-old who stood up to the ICE agents in Minneapolis in January of this year, and she was shot dead. And to all of those who have been out to protest in Minneapolis, again, really, really brave people. And all the women who I'm really proud. So I'm in Dorset Health, the trade union, and as Sam said at the beginning, you know, we won the Subco battle last year, and I'm really proud to stand with all of those women that are in my branch and in our trade union. Unison is the largest trade union in the country. There's over 1 million people in it. Nearly 80% of our members are women, and our branch alone, we've got 4,000 members in our branch, and over 80% of our branch members are women. So when the Trust last year sprung on us that they were going to privatise, they were going to outsource and privatise, and so 1,700 people's jobs were going to be moved out, it was the women who stood up, and it was the women who got together and said, no, we're not going to take this. And the Trust, they didn't back down because they had a few conversations with us and thought, you know what, actually, we're being a bit out of order here. No, they backed down because they knew they weren't going to win. They backed down because they knew that we were going to fight till the end. And women were at the leading activism in that. So, and as a trade unionist, I think it's really important to realise, you know, we don't all have shared identities within our union. But what we have is something really powerful. We have shared values. We look after each other. In a world where power protects power and money protects power, protects money, we know as a shared value we look after each other. Under our current Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, so she's brought in some of the harshest immigration policies. And Labour think that, well, and it's not just Labour, it's the Tories beforehand, they think putting a black woman in that position to deliver racist policies, which are the harshest we've seen for a long time, is not racist because she's black, so it can't be. And I don't even think if they think this, but they actually think having a black woman at that level is inspiring for other women because, she's made it through that glass ceiling. What she actually does is she double glazes that glass ceiling for the rest of us. She stopped it. And so I'm not into that. But when we have women like that, powerful women. Me, I'm a half Jewish, half Irish, single, 50-year-old working class woman. The odds are stacked against me, come on, let's face it. And I think a few people have said, as Tia said earlier, I never apologise for the space I take up. I make sure that the space I take up, I'm moving that space much bigger so I can bring other women through into that space. Thank you.
I stand here today with a fire in my chest because women are not just part of the fight back, we are leading it, and we always have. International Women's Day is not a box-ticking exercise. It is not a polite nod to women's contributions. It is a declaration, loud, unapologetic, and uncompromising. Across the world, women are resisting systems that were built to keep them silent. In Palestine, women are holding communities together with nothing but a refusal to give up on their children's future. They are teaching in bombed-out classrooms, in tents, in the dust, making it unmistakably clear that education is a human right and that the world must demand an immediate and lasting ceasefire. In Iran, girls and women rise again and again against brutality, risking freedom, risking safety, risking their lives, because dignity is not negotiable. And in Minnesota, women are taking on racism, poverty, state violence, and attacks on bodily autonomy with relentless organised power. Different places, different struggles, but one truth. When women rise, oppression shakes. And let's be honest, the injustice we see globally is mirrored right here at home. The fight is on our doorstep. It is in our classrooms. It is in our communities. That is why the Save Education campaign is not just another policy dispute. It is a line in the sand. Because when education is cut, when support staff disappear, and when class sizes explode and behaviour escalates, it is women who are forced to carry that weight. Women who make up the majority of the education workforce. Women who are pushed to breaking point as political decisions rip support away from the children who need it most. Women who are plugging every gap left by a system deliberately hollowed out. Women who find themselves doing 2 jobs for the price of half a salary and still being blamed when the impossible becomes unmanageable. Save Education is a campaign for our schools, yes, but it is also a campaign for women's equality, women's safety, and women's right to work without being crushed. Because when governments defund public services, they are banking on women picking up the pieces quietly. And let me tell you, we are done being quiet. Don't count that bit. Women have always been the backbone of our communities, and we are also the engine of resistance. We are the people who say enough. Enough injustice, enough poverty, enough violence, state or otherwise.
enough cuts that destroy futures and pile pain on the shoulders of women who have already given everything. So today, let this be more than a speech. Let it be a promise that we will not whisper. We will not wait our turn. We will not apologise for demanding the world that we deserve. We will show up. We will speak out. We will fight back. In solidarity with women in Palestine, in Iran, in Minnesota, in Dorset, and in every corner of the world where courage outweighs fear. Because women are leading the fight back. And today, right here, right now, so are we. So here's what I'm asking. Not politely, but urgently, seriously, and unapologetically. Join the Save Education campaign. Stand with us. March with us. Flood consultations. Email MPs. Show up to actions. Make it impossible for them to ignore us. Organise where you work. Hold meetings. Talk to colleagues. Build confidence. Power grows person by person, and then it explodes. Stand with every woman facing injustice, in school, in our unions, in our community. If you see harm, challenge it. If you see someone alone, stand beside them. And say it with me, loudly. We won't be silent, we won't back down, we will save education, and we will win. Solidarity, strength, and rage turned into action.
Hello, I'm Annika, daughter of an immigrant, and I just want to say that on this day I'm thinking about my mum and what a brave woman she's been in her life to have left her country and put herself in quite a vulnerable position with no family or support network around her to raise children and rely completely on a man to provide for her. And I think what would have happened if my father had just sort of up and left, like so many women are in that kind of position and have to survive. And I think disproportionately women are facing very difficult situations and economically incredibly vulnerable. And for the last sort of 20 years I've been working in retail, and just so happens to be one of those sectors that is predominantly women on very low pay. And I've always thought to myself, we are so incredibly vulnerable and so incredibly brave. And that's why women stand up for what's right, isn't it? That's why we all recognise the struggles that other people go through. And I don't know why I'm so nervous. In September last year, there was a new campaign group that launched, pretty much from Stand Up to Racism, sort of making connections with other groups and people that wanted to do a campaign called Women Against the Far Right. And they created a petition that was signed by over 12,000 people. And I wanted to read briefly what that was, just so you have an idea of what they stand for. Okay, I'll just read this a little bit. Okay. The far right is using women's safety as a weapon to spread racism and division. They are not defenders of women. They exploit violence against women and children to push hate. Together we can stand with all survivors and victims of abuse, unite against the far right and challenge the racist lies and scapegoating. Join women MPs, cultural figures and campaigners in signing the open letter to show that we will not let the far right speak in our name. And there's like a long list of all kinds of people that are very prominent and famous and important people. But over 12,000 people signed this petition. And we all want to come together on the 28th of March as a kind of group, as representing women against the far right. And I hope that lots of you will be able to come up to London because it's going to be a huge event. In 2 weeks' time, there's going to be some stalls in Dorchester and Weymouth to try and promote this event. If you are free, that's the 21st of March, then help out at the stall just to try and get more people to get on the coach up to London and make it a really huge event.